Today we're discussing some news that could have an impact on future NHL expansion or relocation if an NHL team needed to move. We talk a lot about, Quebec City, Houston, Kansas City, even recently been talking about the Atlanta Thrashers returning. But is there a different location with a different owner that could actually be in the works for a future NHL team? We'll discuss the possibility coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned today, I want to discuss some information around a potential future NHL franchise. Now, of course, this is all, rumors you could say based on what NHL insiders have been able to piece together. But based on a recent meeting held by Gary Bettman, it looks like there might be some different things possibly being discussed for the future of the National Hockey League. Now, like I said before, when you hear about NHL expansion, you hear about probably 3 or 4 other cities. I know recently there's been some talk about the Atlanta Thrashers returning. There was a recent report from ESPN suggesting that Atlanta and Houston possibly could be getting NHL teams in the next few years. You hear a lot about Kansas City possibly being a potential location. Of course, there's folks, including the government and Quebec City, that have an arena ready, willing, and able, ready to go. Would love to get a team back. Of course, they've been without the Nordiques for quite some time now. So those are the main kind of cities you hear about whenever you talk or hear any news or speculation regarding future expansion or relocation. Now, relocation hasn't been that much of a hot topic in the NHL because for the most part, you could say majority of the NHL teams are extremely stable. There's really only one I think anybody would kind of feel right now would have any chance of moving. And even though today I don't think we can say the odds are very high, they're the only one that has really any chance, in my opinion, and that would be the Arizona Coyotes. Of course, we know that they are currently in a college arena for the ASU. They don't have their former arena that they used to play in. Of course, in Glendale, no longer there. This is the first year in ASU. They've got a contract to play there for the next 3 or 4 years. They're in the process of bidding on a new arena project in Tempe, which they feel will be more successful and be able to get the attendance numbers up. Now, of course, that project is heading to a referendum in May, and at the same time, it's also facing a lawsuit about the proposed residential buildings that we're going to be going with the project. It's not just an arena, it's a whole district they're looking to build, including, besides the arena, you're looking at, other entertainment venues, restaurants, and a residential section too. And it's the residential section that the city of Phoenix has issues with, which, like I said, that's the lawsuit. So I don't know if that's going to hold anything up. Could have some impact there. Either way, you can fair to say that until the Coyotes have a firm arena deal with shovels in the ground, it's building, it's in progress, there's going to be a little bit of instability there. That much we do know. The only other team, there's the Ottawa Senators in the process of being sold. One of the conditions on that sale is to keep it in Ottawa. There's over 6 groups bidding with multiple billionaires. There's no doubt that team's not going anywhere. The new ownership will be keeping that team in Ottawa. The Calgary Flames are looking for a new arena and trying to re-engage the city because they've needed an arena for some time. The Saddle Dome needs to be replaced. And I know I've heard rumblings in the past, although I really don't think there's much of a chance of that team really moving. But, that arena deal, I guess, is the only reason there's even ever mentioned whatsoever. But could there be a new location that we haven't mentioned yet that very well could be a major solution and something that the NHL has its eye on? Now, according to the latest 32 Thoughts podcast with Jeff Merrick and Elliot Friedman, they're talking about the fact that Gary Bettman this past week, just a few days ago, had dinner with a NBA owner, Ryan Smith, in New York City Tuesday after an NBA sort of board of governors meeting. Now, we know that Gary Bettman, typically one of the big things that's most successful with him is he doesn't seem to have an issue finding owners in most scenarios. And Ryan Smith, who was the owner of the Utah Jazz and co-owner of the MLS soccer team in Utah, the Real Salt Lake, that is a prime candidate that the NHL would probably love to have as part of the ownership group. Now, he's a billionaire. He's fairly young. He's about 45 years old. And like I said, he's got his hands in multiple other sports, and it seems to be the way that sports ownership is trending. You're going to see like these little groups or conglomerates of owning multiple franchises and multiple sports leagues. He's already got an NBA team, got an MLS team, and according to Friedman, his name has been brought up and mentioned. He's heard his name in NHL circles before. I think that there's interest, at least on his part, to someday own a team. Doesn't mean that it's going to be an expansion team. Doesn't mean a team's going to relocate if he did buy it. Any of that stuff. But at the end of the day, he's a very interesting guy that Friedman and Merrick went on to describe as somebody that the NHL and Gary Bettman would see as an ideal owner that they would have heavy interest in if he is indeed serious about owning an NHL franchise. Now, like I said, this has been ongoing for some time. And Friedman's original thought was wondering if things don't go well with the Arizona Coyotes team and their referendum that's coming up here soon, or if this arena deal somehow goes sideways at all, could he be a potential person who could get involved, and could they relocate? I mean, there's no, firm reason to say that's going to happen, but there's a lot of things that need to happen with the Arizona deal to keep them there. And obviously, like I said, there's still some instability until everything gets sorted out. Now, the other thing, too, that's kind of been brought up recently, too, is with the new NHLPA Executive Director, Marty Walsh. One of the things he mentioned in his media availability the other day, as far as talking about to the media what the main priorities and top issues that they're dealing with at the NHLPA right now, he did bring up the fact that the Coyotes are playing in a college arena, and he didn't really seem to be too fond of this idea, and there could be future pushback from the PA side of things if this has to continue on for too long a period of time. And at this rate, until they have an arena deal, which is going to be several more months if everything goes well, and then, probably looking at maybe next year before they start to build, 2 years plus for it to take place. And they're going to be playing in ASU for 3, maybe 4 years. It could be a long haul here, and that's something that a lot of people, are just not overly fond of. So, of course, that's one of the main things that comes to mind. But again, no real, certainty that that's what would happen. But when you get a team that needs to move, obviously there's things there that you need to have new ownership. And he could be one of the teams get involved. Now, of course, if there are other ownership groups in the U.S., especially anything that would be considered the western part of the country, like Houston, for example, it might be an easier transition. Quebec City's sitting there ready, willing, and able to. But, of course, the NHL, if the Coyotes were the team that had to move, would probably prefer to keep them in the West, for Quebec is very much in the East. So that may not be the greatest fit. But the other thing here, too, of course, with all his businesses being in the state of Utah, Salt Lake City right now seems to be the favorite to host the 2030 Winter Olympics, which could suggest that a new arena could be in the mix there to be built for the 2030 games that could house hockey and basketball. So, there could be some new infrastructure there that might, be good for an NHL team. So there's that possibility as well. The soccer team that he owns in MLS, he co-owns with David Blitzer. Of course, David Blitzer also is one of the co-owners of the New Jersey Devils. So he's already got a connection to the NHL through him. And of course, Blitzer also co-owns the Philadelphia 76ers too. So these guys both own NBA teams separately. They own an MLS team together. And of course, Blitzer already has connections in the NHL with ownership of the Devils. So there's all that stuff at play. They also talk about the fact Merrick brings up that he was also born in the state of Oregon. So even if he's not looking for another franchise in Utah, maybe back home where he's originally from in Oregon. Merrick brings up the fact that when there was talk about Seattle being the next NHL expansion franchise, that there was some people that he had talked to that suggested that Portland, of course, in Oregon, might be a better market than Seattle and might be the place that the NHL would be better off to go first. Of course, Portland very much is a hockey city, lots of history there. So, could they look to maybe put another team in the Pacific Northwest to give another rival to Seattle? That's always a possibility. But you have to ask yourself, though, at some point, if the NHL does expand, how many more teams is it going to add? It's already at 32. Would it go 34? Would it be 36? It's really difficult to say with all the rumors about Houston, and then you throw this new owner possibly into the mix with a team either in Utah or in Portland, and then they throw in possibly Atlanta wanting another shot, Quebec City. Like, there could be as many as 4 new franchises if the NHL really wanted to go there. Doesn't mean that they're going to, of course, because that's that's a big jump. I mean, obviously, the more teams you add, It means you add a lot more jobs of hockey players. Will the product at the elite level of the NHL be watered down too much? I know we've heard that argument before when there was far less teams when it was expanding, of course. From well into the 20s and 30s. Originally, like we've heard that issue brought up numerous times over the years throughout the 90s and 2000s as the NHL has continued to grow and expand and add additional teams. And at this point, I mean, the game seems to be in a really good place with high level skill. So I would think adding some new teams might not be too bad, but it's really difficult to say. If the NHL ever did want to expand by that much, then I honestly don't think it would be something that would be done very quickly. I think it'd be a process, or maybe one new team every couple of years or something. And maybe that's a 5 to 10 year growth strategy, something to that effect. But we've heard before from other insiders like Chris Johnston saying that, even though it wasn't going to be high on the radar before, due to the pandemic and due to the fact that the lost revenues there for a few years, don't be surprised if the NHL does look to expansion to kind of push more money back in his pockets to make up for all the money and more that they didn't make during the pandemic. Of course, the sale of the Ottawa Senators right now is going to have a major impact on any of this because it could very well look like it's going to sell for over $900 million. The Seattle expansion fee was $650. Vegas was $500. So the next expansion fee very well could be well over $900. It could be close to $1 billion US. And for them to expand by 2 or even 4 teams over the next, say, decade, that is a lot of extra revenue coming in, which could push things up when it comes to, obviously how much money the league's making and bringing in for the ownership group, etc. So it's a really very interesting concept. That much we do know for sure. Obviously, the fact that Gary Bettman met with a billionaire who's been linked to having interest in owning an NHL team before doesn't mean that there's anything real immediate on the horizon here. But when you take a look and kind of connect the dots on what he already owns, what kind of areas might make sense for him to put a new team if they were going to do that, or would he possibly be involved in, maybe buying another team? Of course, there's other teams too that we don't know that might be exploring the possibility of selling that don't necessarily need to be relocated either, right? Look at the Senators. This all came to be in the past year because of the untimely death of owner Eugene Melnyk. If he wouldn't have passed away, that team wouldn't have likely been publicly up for sale right now, and this might not be taking place. So obviously other owners are looking at this process, seeing how much money the Sens are going to sell for and how much money the Melnyk family is going to cash in for here. And maybe they're saying, you know what, if I could sell and, make a big profit, maybe now's the time for me to get out. As much as I like owning a franchise, I like being that much more profitable at the same time. So hard to say what this could lead to, if anything, but of course this has gotten people talking. Elliot Friedman and Jeff Merritt typically have pretty good sources, pretty good information, so I thought it'd be interesting to take a look at. Do you think the NHL should expand again, for starters? And which cities do you think make the most sense? Does it make sense that a guy like Ryan Smith could look to put a new team in the Pacific Northwest? You could possibly still add a franchise in Houston, of course, in the South and Texas. You could still add Eastern teams like Quebec City or in Atlanta as well, and it could still make things evened out. It might just have to be done over a period of time. I think there's enough interested ownership groups there. Are they willing to pay the big price that the NHL is going to be looking for? Would the product still be at the same level? Would it be watered down too much? Or how could all this work? Let me know your thoughts on all that and more down in the comments, and we'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, of course, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.